Well, you must be doing something right. I saw in your bio that you've won 120 awards, and some of them for interior design as well as architecture. The first time you ever won an interior design award, did you have a funny feeling? Did you think you'd gone over to the other side?
Well, I should have answered the previous question. I'll do it at this time. That to make something out of nothing, I don't know how to design an empty building because of the traffic, the quality of light of the site, the scale, the sympathies of the client, their art, their non-art, their dreadful furniture or their good furniture. You are designing all the time because if you don't listen to your client, you're not going to build the building. This is the only profession in the world that has to have a client. I mean, a painter can paint on the floor, on the table, on the wall. The sculptor can find a block out in this. We need this fat cat to come in and say, yes, I believe in what you're doing. And if you don't satisfy him, he's not going to build the building. So you've got to get this unit of thought of what is really the best thing we can do to make that site look better than it does now. And that's our responsibility. So it comes to, after you've done all of this, of course you know where the furniture is going. And after we start construction, we then present what I think the furniture should be, which is always a difficult task. We have had people, because my contract says you hire an interior decorator and I quit. I've only done that twice. But at least I've got a vote in there to argue with them about, you know, who is this guy that's going to want to come in there and make a statement within my statement? And you're going to be living in an argument all the time. When we have worked with them before where we've just busted our butt of where the ceiling meets the glass, he comes in and he puts swags of cerise right over that detail. So if you notice, I don't have any curtains in any of my building.
I don't know if architects have privilege like priests and penitents or attorney-client privilege, but in case they don't, I'm going to ask you who some of your favorite clients were. I'm hoping you'll say Jim Lehrer because I'm a journalist. But and of course I'm going to ask you who some of your least favorite clients were.
The least favorite, they all know who they are. And I'd rather not put them on an international hit list. But all of us architects and designers, we talk to each other. And when I've got a guy, you know, as Lou Kahn used to say, when they're interviewing you, you are interviewing them. And when a client behaves badly, as every now and then they do, and they turn and take a piece out of my leg, I'm madder at myself than I am at them, because I didn't see what a stinker he was when he or she when I was being interviewed. Favorite clients, I mean I've had so many clients. I think I've had 450, something like that, all different size projects. And I've always been able to, overall, how do you do, as, again, quoting Lou Kahn, how do you do a beautiful building for a rat? You don't. You just don't. And we've turned down an awful lot of rats. But, you know you're going to have trouble with people that want their houses to look bigger than they are rather than the size they are and things like that.
Who do you designed for Jackie Kennedy?
Onassis.
Jackie Kennedy Onassis. I already had a question prepared and we got one. What was she like? And I guess what I want to ask you really is, did you learn anything from her as well as?
A lot. She was very different from all of us. Anybody that picks up a piece of her husband's skull off the trunk of the car is going to be quite different for the rest of their lives. But as a client, she was meticulous, organized. Up in Hyannis, she laid out the entire house with blocks of brick and stone and string all out on the beach, and would call me periodically saying, how high is the ceiling in the living room? And she was taking notes, and the meetings sometimes were endless, but there were questions that had to be answered, and she kept an eye on me. Yeah, she was an interesting woman.
Leaving architecture, residential architecture aside for a moment, you designed the Renwick Gallery at the Smithsonian.
No, James Renwick designed the Renwick Gallery. I'm not that old yet.
Well, you did something at the Renwick Gallery, and you've designed, according to your website, U.S. embassies in Paris and Moscow, the consulate in St. Petersburg, universities in Cairo and Athens, Half Moon Bay Hotel in Antigua, a place I've never been, but it sounds beautiful. Which of these was the most challenging and rewarding?
It's can you imagine coming from Grand Rapids, Michigan, and being asked to do our embassy in Paris? It was, the building was built in 1737, and Charles-Maurice Talleyrand, the most incredible statesman French has ever produced, died in that house in 1837. And I used to, when they cleared out all the furniture, because my job was to convert it into American building codes and to house the Chancery of the United States. And right on the Place de la Concorde, I mean, right out the windows where the guillotine was. And Talleyrand wrote his memoirs in the Salon des Aigles and never mentioned the day that the pyramid went up. He was there and didn't say a word about erecting that thing. It was, I used to walk through there at night alone, and I swear I could hear his footprints, lump, lump, behind me. Just imagine the echoes that that building, those spaces have seen and held. And working on the U.S. Capitol, I was the fourth architect allowed to touch that building. Of course, I touched it underground, but never mind. And it was just such an honor, the respect of all those architects that went before me, who were so bloody smart, and listening to perhaps the most terrible client in the world, the Congress of the United States, and could come up with that building that still inspires everybody that looks at it.
Speaking of another building in Washington that inspires people, what do you think of the White House from an architectural standpoint? Does it still speak to who Americans are today?
Oh, sure. James Hoban was an Irishman, and he actually knocked off a house in Dublin, I think called Leinster House, for its plan. And of course, Jefferson was the eye at the time, and thought the building was terribly appropriate, since Jefferson was copying everything in sight on graph paper. But, oh, it's a marvelous building. The thing that always, we went through there on almost a very special tour when Reagan was in the house, and we got up, and this decorator who worked for Reagan came from, of course, Los Angeles, and they had done all sorts of weird things inside, like, you know, étrangers nailed to the walls and things, all very sort of Hollywood decorated. Every president, ever since time began, has had to put their own stamp inside that building, which is their privilege. But I got up to that building, you know, it was called the White House because it was burned in 1815 by the Brits, and we had to paint it. Well, Reagan had painted it off-white. It wasn't white. It isn't white now. Do we call it the off-White House? After the last administration, you bet.
From an architectural standpoint, not a political one, but actually this is a political question too. How do you view the growing trend towards constructing U.S. embassies abroad as forbidding impregnable fortresses?
Oh, it's just sad. You know, in the Kennedy years, they appointed the best architects in the country to do our new embassies, 252 embassies across, you know, the world. And they're some of the most remarkable buildings ever built by that. And it occurred again back in the 70s, late 70s, where we started doing it under a very enlightened head of the Foreign Building Office of the State Department. Now, with security and bombs and everything, my embassy in Chancery has been rented out to an American law firm, and we're going way the hell out into the country where we can have moats, drawbridges, and it's just, we're doing that all across the country because we are under attack by terrorists and everything else. If you look at the British Embassy up the street on Massachusetts Avenue, you can see their defenses. Cars can't get anywhere near it, but it's not like the Hotel Toronto, you're 4 feet away